Welcome to a new episode of Prepr Talks, where we talk with thought leaders about developing smart websites. We focus on content marketing, conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, and personalization. Today, we welcome a special guest. He works at one of the most well-known data-driven websites or companies out there. And his name is Alex Joanna from Booking.com. Welcome,
Thank
Alex.
you.
Did I pronounce your last name
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's okay. Alex Joanna. So yeah, a little faster. If you go faster, it's
Yeah.
going to be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice of you to be our guest today on the
Thank
show.
you for having
Welcome.
me.
When we talk about smart websites and data-driven work, Booking.com is, in my opinion, is a textbook example. It's a Dutch company originally, and we've heard a lot of about A/B testing and how they do that on the public website. So I think we can learn a lot from you today. And already mentioned, when we think of Booking.com, we quickly think of booking a hotel as a consumer. But of course, there's also the other side of Booking.com. That's the site where the properties are managed, listed, where people sign up, like hotels and vacation rentals. And that's the part that we are going to talk about today. And to start things off, maybe you can give a brief introduction to your role at Booking.com and what you are
Yeah,
responsible for.
certainly. So again, my name is Alex Joanna. Pleased to meet you. So I'm the digital content experience manager in Booking.com. This on its own doesn't really mean much, so I'm going to try to give you much more information. So what my team does primarily is that indeed we focus on the business to business side of things. Usually when you think about Booking.com, you think about the consumer facing website. You think about the application, meta results on different websites and so on. My team handles something else. So it's a marketplace essentially where you have supply and demand. And where the demand comes from the guests, we handle supply. We're on the business to business side of things. My team specifically creates content that we share with our global accommodation partners. And this is also, I think, a good moment to pause. I want to define what partner means. By partner, I mean anything that you can see on Booking.com, right? So from your smallest apartments, vacation rentals, boutique hotels, even global chains, our team, my team, creates the content that these people see. We focus primarily on giving them information. We give them support. We give them forums. We give them education, courses, and so on, with the end goal of helping them run their business in a better way. And you can find our work at partner.booking.com, or as we call it, Partner Hub.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's very clear. So we are on the partner side
Yep.
of things, but still, you are on a data-driven trajectory there. But we are going to talk about that later a bit more. You already talked about some audiences and types of people you were targeting. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that. So, what are the target audiences of your content?
Well, I think this deserves a little bit of context. Booking.com, you might know this, but we've been around for somewhere around 25 years. And during this time, we've become very, very good at a few things. One of the things that we become very good at is adapting to the needs of the hospitality industry, and especially for professionals. We offer quite literally hundreds, if not thousands, of options that they can tweak, adjust, optimize, and so on, so that they can make their listings more, let's say, appealing to their guests. The other side of things is that not everyone is a seasoned professional. Not everyone has gone to hotel school. Not everyone works for a big company, such as a hotel or so on. So for people that are just getting started, we try to make their lives as easy as possible. So it's either we work for, let's say, target audiences, we work with experts, or we work with people that are just getting started. Throughout, we try to focus on making their lives as easy as possible and doing the best that they can on Booking.com.
Yeah. And is that more or less how you segment your audience? Like you have these big partners and smaller partners, and you have experienced partners and novice
It
partners?
depends. Segmentation is a word that can mean many things for us. Usually, what happens when we segment audiences, and if you look at our target audiences, indeed, you're going to look at different variables. So you look at location, language, property type. You look at, for example, their age with Booking.com, what settings they've applied, what products they've implemented. It could be literally hundreds of variables that we take into account, and we do take them into account when we communicate them. Well, When we create the content for them, when we create anything that they see, we take into account the variables that I mentioned prior.
I can imagine that when you work with partners, that customer satisfaction or partner satisfaction is one of your main KPIs. But it's also very general. And since it's very interesting, you already mentioned that you are in business for 25 years, so you have a lot of experience in this field and with this data-driven approach. So maybe you can take us along how you look at KPIs and go beyond the customer satisfaction
Yeah,
KPI.
we're fortunate. We've been along for a long time. So if we look at KPIs, maybe it's good to start from a basis point, and I think it's also well, if I reference my job description or my job title, what we try to do is we try to improve digital experience. That's the main goal that we have, and along with that, we have a lot of things that we want to do, a lot of things that we plan on doing, and a lot of things that we've done. Some common denominators throughout all of this is that indeed we want to improve the satisfaction of our partners with our services, with our products, with the performance that they're seeing from these things. And wherever possible, we want to reduce their needs on, let's call it, outside intervention or outside expertise. And the latter of this is actually very important because, well, I was just talking earlier about the fact that using booking.com as, let's say, a new property can be let's say that there's a steep learning curve associated with it. And indeed, the one of the ways in which we can try to understand the behavior of our partners and how they react to our products is by looking at, for example, customer support tickets. But it's not just that. We look at a whole variety of things associated with their behavior, how they react to our things, how they react to the industry in general, right? Because we're a global company, so we have to understand how they're reacting to what's happening outside of our scope as well. Throughout, we try to give them as much knowledge and information as possible. I did say this, we've been fortunate to be around for a while, but we've also been fortunate in the fact that what we've noticed is that if you do dedicate enough time, if you do dedicate enough effort and skill and expertise and people to this, the knowledge of our partners tends to compound. You tend to learn things. You tend to understand how things work. And that, coupled with the data that we give, so we actually give our partners data around their specific location, around trends, and so on. These combined usually result in autonomous, clear decisions that partners make, and usually really good performance from them.
Yeah. And I understand that, but I'm wondering. So what are some key things you measure with? Is it more related to the customer experience and what you see happening and what they do on your platform, or is it more related to asking feedback from your partners and define your KPIs around that? And probably it's a combination of
It is a
both.
bit. It's a combination of both, and it's a bit of everything, really. So and again, we're lucky to have our size for our scope and what we do. We track most of anything that you can think about through digital, but also outside of digital. So, be it feedback, we look at the feedback that we receive from our partners directly. We look at the vanity metrics on our website. So, for example, sessions, pages, and so on. But deeper than that, we have KPIs that we have internal. So, internal KPIs that we've established to be good benchmarks for assessing how something is performing, if it's good or if it's bad. Our main interest, again, is improving the partner experience and improving the way that they run their business and ultimately how they deliver hospitality to their guests. And throughout, we measure a variety of things. If I give you a taste into that, it might be the rate at which they implement a specific product. It could be, as you said, customer support tickets. It could be, the rate at which they consume specific bits of content. It's a mix of things, and we take most of everything into account.
Okay. And we already talked about how long you are in business and how much you know, and you mentioned it in this last answer as well. So this might lead to a conclusion that you know everything and that's it's an easy peasy job, but it's probably not, because there are challenges all the time. So I'd like to ask you, what are the biggest challenges in a company like yours with all these partners and these millions of people booking?
I don't know if we have challenges so much as we see them as opportunities. Recent years have put them in the forefront of our thoughts. I'm going to talk about my job specifically, and one of the opportunities that we see in the next period is, well, it's really natural for us. It's personalization down to the individual. So not necessarily on a segmented level, but down to the individual. Who is logged in? What are they seeing? What have they consumed? Why are they looking for something? The question here is not necessarily if we can give them better content, but how can we make their lives easier? And we believe content is a way to do that. So how can we compound their knowledge? How can we make them learn more? This is one of the things that we put as a big opportunity in front of us. But equally, I think now is the time to say it, and we are very optimistic about the future, having gone and having been in the wake of a global pandemic. The future that we envisioned a few years ago certainly is different, but we remain optimistic about it. So these are the things that we see as opportunities, not necessarily as problems.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little sidestep, but you mentioned the pandemic, and here in the Netherlands we see, and I think it's a global problem that there's a lot of work to be done and not enough people that can do it. So is that related to your work as well, and how you advise your partners, or is that this really something that's
It's
up
up
to
to
them?
them. In rare occasions would we step in to do this because this is ultimately a business decision that's their own. They own their business. They own the relationship with their guests. What we do is we try to help them out, but ultimately it's their decision.
Yeah. Okay. We already talked a little bit about personalization. Maybe we dive into that a little deeper in a few minutes. But I like to step back a little bit to the optimization part and the A/B testing part. I think I had a meeting myself. I think it's almost 15 years ago at Booking.com in Amsterdam, and I was very surprised at the level of A/B testing they did at that time. So that's quite some time ago. So I can imagine it's even more advanced at the moment. And you are on the partner side of things. So can you take us along how you do your set up your testing and what you test and give us an overview of how this is done at your
Oh,
in your team.
well, there's no silver bullet. There's no one way to do things. I think workflows are important, and I think agreeing upon common principles is important. You're right. Much of what we do is A/B tested, if not multivariate tested. I'm going to talk about my team specifically, and maybe then I can go to the wider company. So my team collaborates directly with literally tens of product teams that work on optimizing and iterating and improving upon the things that they give to partners. Um, to do this, to be able to support that, you must create content. So it's either to say advertise something, or maybe it's something to convince someone, or maybe it's something to further educate. Our team collaborates with all of these experiments. So we've been exposed to, I don't want to say a number that's probably incorrect, but maybe thousands of experiments throughout my time in booking. There's one common thread throughout all of these, and that's that an A/B test should be thought about strategically, not necessarily to improve a KPI. So maybe this isn't an answer that you were expecting, but I'm going to say that whenever you do test something, and I think that this is something that I would say to most of anyone, think about what is the underlying reason behind you doing something. Because if you're just trying to improve a KPI, you're probably not going to do a good job. If you want to improve the experience of your audience, that's something else. And how can you improve it? If you have two options, let's A/B test. Let's see. Um, we tried to follow a scientific hypothesis method, so scientific methodology rather. And throughout, what we tried to focus on is just that, improving the experience of our audience. We collaborate with the guest side of things as well, but to give you a snapshot into how it runs holistically throughout the company, we are lucky to have in-house systems that take care of most of the statistical complexity of what we do. At any given moment, there could be thousands of experiments that run either on the consumer or the partner-facing website, and we try to do as best as possible, and the result is what you see.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you say that you have to look at it from more strategically than looking at your KPI. And the question that pops up in my mind immediately then is, so how do you measure success then? So uh, maybe can you give an example of what the difference is between the two? Because I can
Of course,
imagine
yeah.
that there's a difference, but how does this work out in practice then?
It might be the case that for any specific goal, you might have a variety of things that you want to do. The whole idea of building a hypothesis is understanding what you want to achieve. So that's the success. What's the definition of done? What's the definition of success? So, say for example, you want to run a campaign. Why do you want to run it? What do you want? What are you going to do with it? Why would you? Why would your audience be interested in it? These are things that we try then to quantify through KPIs. KPIs are just a reflection of reality, or not even a reflection. They're an indication of how things are going. But it's not the KPIs that are important so much as how the experience is. So our A/B tests, that was the long-winded answer. The simple answer is our A/B tests are usually thought of in terms of what does the audience expect, what do they want, what are they looking for, and based on that, we try to make it as simple as possible or as obvious as possible by either producing content, placing it strategically, improving the website, the user experience, and so on. But the definition of success is decided before that. So we want to see a
Yeah.
specific change, we want to see people going to a specific page, and so on. If we reach a threshold that is considered statistically significant, then it's a success. If it's not, we document it, we sunset it, we do something else.
So I can imagine it's more on a jobs to be done level. Are our guests or our partners able to get their job done more than is there a click through rate that increased with
You
X% or
took the
something?
words out of my mouth. That's exactly what we use. That's exactly our methodology and our wording. What?
Yeah, that makes it very clear. I think what the difference is, and that's interesting. So you've seen thousands of A/B tests, and just a quick average. How many of those did surprise the result did surprise you in the end?
Ooh, surprise me.
Is,
Uh,
are you surprised 50% of the time, or 10% of the time, or 90% of
ooh,
the time?
I I wouldn't know if I can put an exact number on it. We're in a position where most of what we have is highly optimized, which means that getting very big surprising results is very difficult. Either a yes or a no. Again, we've been around for a long time, so optimization has been the core of what we're doing. At this point, we're doing iteration, we're doing small changes. But as you say this, I'm thinking. So I do have one example from a few years ago, and this serves to prove a point that usually when you A/B test, you have to be prepared for many things. I remember that I was working with one of our go-to-market teams, and we were working on a new recommendation system, and I thought it was pretty good. We A/B tested it. I checked the results, so like literally what recommendations the system would give, what it would spit out, why, and I thought it was better than me. I thought it was okay. This is amazing. And then, much to my surprise, when we actually checked the results, it didn't pass experimentation. My intuition was completely wrong. So that was one of the moments, and this must have been 2 years ago, and it was one of the moments when I thought, "Wow, okay, um, it's
Mhm.
not just the case that you think it's right. Something must be replicable. It must be repeatable by multiple people." And this is core to the scientific methodology. If you do it, other people must be able to do the exact same thing. Given the same situation, the same tooling, and so on, they must get the same results. Because if not, it's not valid. And that was one of the moments that were, let's say, most counterintuitive for me. I thought it was really good, but no, again, my intuition was proven wrong. So, yeah, these things happen.
Yeah, yeah. And you already mentioned it a little bit, but maybe you can give us some do's and don'ts for A/B testing with from someone with your experience.
Hmm. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier in that A/B testing shouldn't be focused on improving KPIs necessarily so much as improving your strategy. And there's a lot to say associated with this, but the world has gone a long way, especially digitally. Let's say user experience has gone a very long way. Best practices by this point are probably best for a reason. So if you ever want to A/B test, say for example, something that might be trivial, such as the button of a website or its color or so on, I would suggest think deeply whether that's something that actually improves what you're doing from a goal perspective, from a strategic perspective. And in my context, it's always the case that does this actually improve the experience of our partners? Um, Simply A/B testing just because you want to see what works best between two options is, to my mind, inefficient, because A/B testing is time and effort consuming. Um, so if you do end up testing something, try to choose something where possible. Essentially, be picky. Try to choose something which improves the experience of your audience wherever possible. So rather than creating a button, maybe changing the format of the page entirely, or anything that can be conducive to people getting a better idea of how to use your product or service, rather than the bells and whistles of it. This is what I would urge, usually, what I would suggest to people. And of course, the basics. Have someone that knows statistics, or get a good tool that can tell you very clearly and conclusively whether your results are correct or incorrect. These are the basics. If I go into a lot more detail, yeah, I don't know how much detail you want, but
No, that's perfect. Yeah, yeah. We could go on and on and on, but what I find interesting is that what you said about A/B testing and going for more. Yeah, I think you suggest go for the big strategical differences you can make within your experience and not the nitty gritty details. And I like to transition to personalization because that's an experience we have at Prepr with our clients. Because with our systems, we offer the option to personalize experiences, and that's one of the big advantages of using a content management system like Prepr. But what I encounter sometimes is that people do want to personalize for the sake of personalization and don't look at this strategical goal you were mentioning with the A/B testing. So I can relate to that from our perspective as well. You already mentioned personalization as one of the challenges you have. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. So what are you trying to accomplish? What are your and first of all, what does personalization mean for your partner
mhm.
program? Because that's another thing I experience with my clients, that personalization is pretty broad term and means a lot to a lot of different people, and it's not always the
Yeah,
same. But okay, it's a broad question, but I think you can
yeah, I
elaborate on
hope I
that.
can. One thing to note, I don't think it's a problem necessarily, as it's the biggest opportunity that we found. Partner.booking.com was launched in 2019, and since then we've improved a lot of things. So we've improved the architecture of the website, we've improved our content, so we've created new content types, we've improved the user experience of the website, and this is just the start of things. But equally, we have started personalizing some things. This is where I want to give the definition that you were asking for. So the personalization that we're looking for is down to the individual level, not necessarily on a segmented level. So let's go back to my let's call it the introduction, where I was talking about what sort of profiles or what sort of segments we cover. So I mentioned, for example, villas or boutique hotels or hotel chains and so on, apartments. These all have different needs. It's not just the case that it's a one size fits all. So whenever you give guidance, whenever you have a conversation with someone, and even in real life, you have to understand what they're looking for specifically. For us to be able to deliver good content and ultimately improve how people perform, it's very important for us to understand what's most important for them. And necessarily between a hotel and an apartment, there are big differences. This is why personalization is something that we're focusing on. At the moment, we're not at the specific lower levels where we want. We're starting, but we're not at all the lower levels. So, for example, down to the, say, for example, if it's an apartment from Amsterdam versus one from Madrid, we're starting. But the point of this, and yeah, I think I'm going full circle now with my explanation, in that the point of this is only so that we give them a better understanding of what is available to them in terms of tooling, our services, our products. If we can give them recommendations, if we can give them access to things that can better inform them or better prepare them for, say, for example, a summer season or a winter season. This is why we want to personalize what we do on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And what are some things that you run into that cause even a big company like yours with a lot of development power as well? What are things that that make this difficult for you? What are the obstacles that you have to tackle that?
Oddly enough, it might be actually having too much data. I I don't know
Yeah.
if this is the biggest issue that I'm facing at the moment, but when you're flooded literally with data from many directions, it might be the case that you have to spend a lot of time in understanding what specifically is important. Um, or rather, what data you should be looking at. I mentioned earlier that we look at the variety at a variety of things. So, for example, performance data on the website, sessions, page views, bounce rate, and so on. Are those really important, or are those things that are indicative of something else? These are some of the questions that we're faced with. More to the point, I mean, if you look at customer support data, if you look at partner satisfaction data, at feedback, at, for example, focus groups, and so on, what is the thing that's going to best inform you as to what your audience truly wants? It might be the case that you have people saying things that they want XYZ feature, but is that really what they want? Or is it an indication of an underlying thing that you need to fix? So these are some of the paradigms that we go through because there are multiple, and trying to understand what data to choose. And in our position, we are blessed. We have a lot of data.
Yeah. And I can imagine when you have a lot of data and you are trying to implement these advanced personalization options and probably several options at the same time. I can imagine this can become very complex pretty quickly because you maybe you even lose the overview of what somebody is viewing because there are so many different options of or combinations that from a page or a component that people can view in different combinations. So is that a problem for you, or is this something you need to be aware
We
of?
have to be aware of it, of course, but wherever possible, we try to put technology into it. So we try to infuse wherever possible technology. Humans are good
Mhm.
at reducing complexity. They're good at trying to understand things at a deep level. But once they do understand things at a deep level, it's important to find a replicable way of doing that again. And usually that's technology.
Yeah. So and it doesn't end up as a black box for you then that you don't know really what's
Oh,
going
it
on in
really
there.
depends. It depends. Some algorithms can become black boxes, of course. I mean, we live in the age of machine learning and AI. After certain iterations,
Yeah.
yeah, you very you'll find a very difficult pattern, not difficult pattern, but it's going to be very difficult to find a pattern in the way that the algorithm behaves. In some situations, we can still understand. We can still understand by tweaking, by putting weights on specific variables, and so on. But yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah. So you were already talking about artificial intelligence, and I don't want to go too deep into that, but this touches on the future of optimization and personalization. So maybe you have some thoughts about what are some next steps you envision for the partner hub that might be innovative in the next 5 years.
I don't think I would impress you very much with my answers, but there are certain things that we want to improve upon. So, for example, our search engine, our recommendation system, because we have one, the way in which we display certain things based on, let's say, prior behavior. It's instant of the partner. So, if they did something specific, how do we react to that on the website in real time? These are tweaks. They're small adjustments. But yeah, it's nothing very surprising. I'm afraid that in this respect, yeah, we're pretty boring. We just try to improve the website as best as possible. And if AI will have a place in that, wonderful. If not, it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be AI as long as it's an algorithm.
So it's continuous optimization, and that's business as usual for almost 25 years. I already understand. So I have some final questions for you. One of the questions I'd like to ask is if you had unlimited resources in your partner hub, and maybe you almost have unlimited resources, but it's never the case. I think. So what would you do then?
No, we don't have unlimited resources. It's strange that you asked me this question because I got asked the exact same question last week by someone, and I'm thinking if I should
Mhm.
give the exact same answer, and I think I will. So if I were to have unlimited resources, what would I do? That's your question, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
wouldn't, let's see, I would hide the unlimited resources or a good chunk of them. I don't think that that I would do much with it. Um, the reason for this is relatively straightforward. Creativity really does come from constraint often, but more to the point, constraint, like not having everything that you ideally want, also creates focus. And in my position, I'd much rather have, let's say, five experts working on very difficult problems rather than having 50 or 500 or 5,000 working on trivial things. So, given infinite resources, I would probably hide a big chunk of that. Maybe some things would get additional attention, but I really don't think we would change course that much.
Okay. And my last question, that's one I always ask, and I think during the interview you've shared some great tips all along. But maybe you have one last tip for our listeners about optimization and how you deal with that at Booking.com and your experience.
So, a tip about optimization. Uh, Um, I think I've talked a lot about the process. I've talked about A/B testing, but one thing that I've not touched upon is failure. So when it comes to
Mhm.
optimization, I would suggest and I would encourage people to get comfortable very quickly with failure. And if not failure, then at least getting comfortable with being proven wrong. This can mean a lot of things. And again, throughout this discussion, we've talked a lot about data, about variables, about A/B testing, and so on. But it could also be getting proven wrong by your colleagues or your audience or the people that you're speaking with. So when it comes to optimization, I think that one of the things that stands out in my experience and working for Booking.com, and maybe even for other companies, is that it's a blessing to have people prove that you're wrong. It's a blessing to have people prove where you're
Mhm.
mistaken. Um, and that's something that I would urge for people that want to get into website optimization, into performance improvements, and so on. I'd say change your mind easily when you're faced with proof that's clear, that's unambiguous, and let truth guide the way.
Yeah, and don't get too much hang up to your own ideas. I can imagine that. And so this leads me to a follow up question. That is, at since you are so data driven, is in the end, is the data always right, or are there cases that you say, okay, we see some things in the data, but still we do it, we go with gut feeling.
Hmm. I wish I had a data scientist with me, but I will try to give you a smart answer here. The data is always right, but it's always right in a specific moment. It's in particular in the hospitality industry, we are a seasonal industry, right? So summer is much more different than winter. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. So a lot of variability comes into play. Usually an A/B test, when it's done, you can believe that, and of course the results are conclusive, that it's bulletproof. That's the best option that you have. But this is the best option only because you tested it. Do you have any other ideas that you can compare against? It's not the case that you've struck gold. It's just that you've made one small step forward. So that's why you have to continuously ask yourself, is this really the best thing? And there are a couple of ways that you could go about that. One is, of course, by looking at more data. Um, but the other option would be, and this is why we're human beings, to use our experience, uh, to use our creativity, our imagination, and our intuition to see if there's anything that we can improve upon. Sometimes it might be difficult to find these things through data, but it might be easier to use your expertise. Yeah, it's a mix. Again, it's a mix.
Yeah, and I think, and that's also a great end to our interview, because when we can conclude that we need a mix of data and creativity to create exceptional customer experiences. That what else could we wish for?
Let's hope so.
I'd like to say so. Okay, Alex, thank you very much for this interview. I think it was very insightful. Lots of great tips, and very nice to hear how. I think a lot of our listeners and viewers don't work at a lot smaller companies than Booking.com, so it's always inspiring to see how a big company like yours goes along with optimization and personalization, and where the challenges lie, and where they are in the process. So thank you
No,
very
thank you.
much for that. Um, We already asked what you are up to in the coming years. So maybe we can talk again, maybe in a few years' time, and see where you are then, and then talk about that at some time.
It would
But
be
thank
my
you for
pleasure.
now.
Thank you.